Lions of the Southland, May 1st, 2022. Mr. Grant, we're both busy people. You've been moving this weekend, so we're going to get right to it. We're going to start with our club sports rundown. The only team that has had a news update is our number 7 in the nation club, men's lacrosse. They are still waiting to hear back from the NCLA about an at-large bid to the national tournament in Round Rock, Texas. So with that piece of business done, we move right on to the softball diamond.
Yeah. I don't think we've still ever beat Clemson yet, have we? Like ever?
Not sure.
Not ideal, but I know you're probably going to have a bit more cloudy opinion on this, as you tend to do. Really, they lost a total of 3 games by 7 total runs.
I would say it's more along the lines of, okay, well, there was a lot at stake heading into this weekend in terms of seeding, but you needed some results to break exactly the right way, and you didn't get results to break that way. And so you're probably slotted into that 7 or 8 seed heading into the ACC tournament. So, I mean, it's just not ideal, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah. And I mean, they had a tough draw this year. Like they're playing the meat of a rising ACC. I think this is about, I don't want to say this is about the best we can expect of them, but also at the same time, like they took care of enough business that they're not in bad.
Not at all. And just to put this in context, and obviously this is the last series of the regular season, Tech finished 36-15. I think 36-15. I think that might not include a game. And 11-13 in the ACC. So given that 11-13 final record, let's talk about that big picture in terms of the ACC tournament. Like I was saying, they are probably locked in to the 7. There's a couple of scenarios at play. First off, you have UVA at number 6. Tech didn't play UVA. We've discussed that before. They played Louisville this weekend and went 1-2. Louisville is the 8. Louisville obviously went 2-1 versus UVA. Tech holds the tiebreaker over Louisville. UVA is 13-11. Louisville is 10-11 and still has a series left to play versus Notre Dame at Notre Dame. So here are your scenarios for going into the last weekend of the ACC regular season. If Louisville sweeps Notre Dame, Louisville is the 6, UVA is the 7, and Tech is the 8. If Louisville goes 2-1, UVA is the 6, Louisville is the 7, and Tech is the 8. If Notre Dame wins the series at all, UVA is the 6, Tech is the 7, and Louisville is the 8. That's at least my rough napkin math on how all this breaks down. You obviously have a Louisville rooting preference here. How does that Notre Dame Louisville series break down to you, knowing what you know both about Notre Dame from Tech playing them and your knowledge of the Louisville team?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I think you can't really frame the postseason without knowing what this looks like for Tech. Louisville's going on the road to South Bend. I think that's a pretty big statement there. And I do want to point out that largely the Louisville series played out very similarly to the Tech Notre Dame series. A lot of runs. Louisville has the potential to hit. I don't know about their pitching depth as much, but definitely have a right to be in the mix there in all of those games. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of hitting up in South Bend this coming weekend.
Yeah. Just to take a look at the bracket to compare placing 7th versus placing 8th. So 7th and 8th, regardless of how you slice it there, you end up in playing in the first day, either at 1 or at 3:30. So pick your poison. That would be versus the 9. If you're the 8, you're playing the 9. If you're the 7, you're playing the 10. And if I have my standings pulled back up here, your 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Your 10 is North Carolina, and your 9 is NC State. I'm not sure Tech played North Carolina this year, but we did play NC State. So NC State is currently 7-14. I think they have one series left versus FSU. North Carolina is 6-15. They have one series left versus Syracuse. So they'll probably trade spots here late on. I don't think Syracuse might have enough juice. Syracuse or Boston College. I actually think it might just be Syracuse that has enough juice to jump North Carolina, but I think most of these slots are already spoken for as we come down the stretch here. So you're kind of just playing for seeding. Well, not really playing, just sort of waiting at home and looking at seeding works out. But it's either NC State or North Carolina. So, that both of those are pretty tough opponents. NC State is definitely tougher than North Carolina, but we'll just have to see how the cookie crumbles there.
Yeah, and it's tough too. You really want to avoid that play-in game if at all possible. Throw your number one in that, I guess, second round. But honestly, this is a team that I wouldn't say is like a shoe-in for the tournament, but they've done all the right things. It's going to be really hard to ignore them. Again, I've seen sure bet Tech teams cough volleyball get left out of the tournament for shadier reasons than this team could. So I don't want to speak and put the cart before the horse, but obviously you want to play as many games in the ACC tournament as possible. It's up in Pittsburgh, so should be interesting. I don't know if they've ever played the ACC tournament in Pittsburgh before, and yeah, obviously a win against the top 18 team would be nice. I think a win and two close losses probably leaves them ranked going into the final week of the year, but they have plenty of time to rest and recuperate. And quite frankly, there's an argument that they could fall out of rhythm, not having a midweek this past week, not having a weekend series this coming week. But quite frankly, I don't think there's any problem going into the ACC tournament fully rested either. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. Just a little bit more on NC State, North Carolina. NC State is 66th in RPI per D1 softball, and North Carolina is 51. So no easy outs, even if you drop even if you're in the first day of play. So it's going to be a very, very competitive ACC tournament this year.
Yeah, and I will say that 9 of Tech's 13 losses in the conference came to Clemson, Florida State, and what's their faces? Dude, respectively. Maybe next year we hit the point where we turn a corner there. But if you're up against those, and Notre Dame, who's the 4th seed, that's 2 more. 11 out of the 13. This is clearly a team that can feast on the team equal to its stature in the conference, but there's definitely a kind of glass ceiling built into the ACC right now, at least as Tech is currently structured. So definitely a storyline to keep your eye on going into next year as well. But this is a team that can mash the ball. It's one that's played fairly well in the conference and very well overall. So should be interesting to see how things play out. Obviously, they played 27 non-con games and went 25 and 2 in those games. So definitely one that's taking care of business. But the ACC is the rising tide. So I guess it's tough, but I think ultimately a good thing to be matched up against one of those North Carolina schools and getting a game, getting a win, getting back into the mix, especially in the tournament.
Yeah, I think your prognostication about them potentially missing out on this tournament might be a little unfounded, considering that they're sitting at 23rd in RPI. Granted, that's before I think 2 games were played to close out the weekend, but I don't see how you can leave out a team that has that is 36-15 and has competed, right, and has all, if not most of its losses, or actually I think all of its losses other than two, to top 15 teams or top 20, 21 teams. So it's difficult for me to say they will not get in, because it seems very obvious to me that they're not going to be even on the bubble. They will be firmly in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, this is more just me hedging bets than anything.
Boo.
Someone's
Atlanta Sports won a championship. Even I've broken out of this.
Okay, bud. I'll believe that when I see it.
Let's talk about another potentially tournament-bound stickball team. Georgia Tech baseball went 2-2 on the week. They took a rough loss at home versus Troy. In the midweek, that was a 12-8 loss. And then they went 2-1 versus Miami. I think that third game has now gone final, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway.
They're down 9 in the ninth. I'll put it like that.
It's effectively final, barring something miraculous. If something changes, we'll update the sheet. They won the series versus the number 3 team in the nation, and they lost versus Troy.
Yep.
There's so many places I want to go with this, but mainly the thing that comes to mind, or two things come to mind. Number one, this team's midweeks have been unexpectedly brutal. I think we saw a really interesting rise in the competitiveness and the quality of in-state baseball this year. And there are a number of factors for that. I think mainly you could probably point to the amended draft last couple of years for the majors that has had a couple of teams still have a lot of senior talent. And then also that senior talent is staying because of the extra COVID year of eligibility. So that's made the state games really competitive, but I part of that is I just don't know how good this team is. Like, their D1 baseball says they're on the cusp of hosting, but also they're down 9 to Miami right now, and they lost by 4 to Troy on Tuesday. Like, are they a top 16 or top 18 team in the nation? Or are they not? Like, it's very confusing to me.
Yeah. See, the interesting thing about the boys, if you will, is that they are really good at hitting the baseball. This is where we talk about Kevin Parada, who deserves more than he's gotten from the media writ large. Obviously, we talk about our glasses wearing catcher with wheels, and also a great hit tool, great power tool. Defense is pretty fine. Really all you can ask for in a player. If Kevin Parada is the sterling shining example of everything that is right with this team, honestly, Andrew Jenkins, Chandler Simpson, Trace Gonzalez, none of them.
It's a formidable
formidable
battery.
Yes, it's one of the scariest lineups in the whole country, right? And that's the thing. Like, we've got a pretty raw talent heavy pitching staff too. They just haven't had the same kind of consistency. But I would argue that when both boom, or both one of each booms and the other busts, they can bail each other out pretty effectively. Like, we saw that Friday night. A 3-1 game. If you would have said to me that Tech was only going to score 3 runs against Miami, I would have said, great, a loss. And I think most of you would have too. Don't lie to us. You would have. But at the same time, that's pitching stepping up. And, even when the bats aren't on, bats step up and score 7 in the next day. And when they both bust, it's pretty spectacular. And I think that's what we've seen in combination, like you said, with the talent staying home. Obviously, for those of us who are around here, and Akshay I have somewhat talked about demographics and sociology and, the kind of physical geography, human geography aspects of sports in the past. But the same things that we see play out in a football macro sense kind of play out in a baseball, softball, basketball micro sense as well, I would say. Georgia Tech kind of being able to take advantage of volleyball being on the rise, of baseball talent really concentrating itself in our neighborhood here, along with some of the other schools. And all that to say, you can go up against midweeks playing the World Series against the Power Five team with the pedigree and the nicest facilities in the country. That's a pretty compelling reason to struggle in the midweeks up against the same thing, as we said, right? If one's booming and one's busting, that being the pitching and the hitting. Really, when they're both on, they're both on. When they're both off, see Wake Forest.
Yeah, I think you might be giving the midweek schedule a little bit or too little credit. Like I don't think it's just it's their World Series thing, but these teams are coming in and playing extremely competitively because they're good teams, right? At one point, all the D1 teams in the state were ranked within the top 25 of RPI, or 25 or 30 in RPI. So they're good programs, and they're good. They're also, like we said, they're taking advantage of the talent that's in this state and in this region, and older talent as well that's stayed an extra year. It's very interesting how this weekend, unlike other weekends, has relied on that pitching. This has been a weekend where pitching has decided these games, especially those first two games that had to be, Zach Maxwell comes in to close both of those games and slams the door shut, getting, I think, 4 outs yesterday, and I think 6 outs the day before in 2-run games. All right, so hats off to him, but it's a change from where Tech is either playing from behind or they're playing with a lead, and you're sort of thinking, okay, well, they're going to have to mash the gas in order to run away with this one, because what's coming out of the bullpen is not necessarily, our strongest gambit strongest gambit that we can put together at the end of the day.
Yep. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's not the strongest we can put together. I just think it's been inconsistent. And that's, I don't want to say a fact of life, but it's certainly been a fact of life for being a fan of this baseball team for longer than just this year's season.
And one thing I want to come back on, just to sort of switch gears as we start to look towards the bigger picture towards the end of the season, Kevin Parada. You mentioned how good he was, how solid of a player he was overall. I think one thing that comes along with that is we saw Joey Bart start to make his major league debut for the Giants the past couple of weeks as baseball has gotten restarted. I think there's one key difference between Bart as that top 2 pick and Parada as he projects out into a top 5 pick, I think, this spring, is that, and you mentioned it, that defense piece, that he is not as good as a pure catcher as Bart was at the same stage. And I think one of the things that we talked about back then is that Bart had the confidence of Danny Hall to call his own games and work with the catcher or work with the pitcher at his own rate. I don't think that Parada's had that same confidence, or at least same catcher ability. I think maybe he might switch positions. I think we talked about that in the writers' room with, as an example, of Bryce Harper, who'd switch positions when he was coming through the prep pipeline. What about Kevin Parada as we move forward to the draft? What do you think his strengths and weaknesses are? And you talked about it a little bit, but what do you think his strengths and weaknesses are? And how do you see him coming together as a professional ball player?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a little bit selling him short and the development potential that he still has. He's a sophomore, right? We saw Joey Bart leave after an extra year on the flats. compared to that, right? Joey Bart left after his junior year. And we're talking about Kevin Parada here, a guy who, well, this is a little bit more arguable of a coaching decision. Didn't start his opening day, right? Wasn't a surefire thing to be the opening day starter. I see
Oh
you were
man, that
about to
was a
have an
whole
aneurysm.
thing.
I,
Oh, that was a
I
whole thing.
also almost had an aneurysm. Yes, this is fair. But it helps my point, right? He has come a really, really, really long way. Even though he was, eminently talented, great hit tool last year, cooled off. But in terms of the combination of hitting for average, hitting for power, wheels, good base running for the most part. He's everything that an offensive player needs to be. And, you combine that with even functional defense, with which he definitely has, and definitely has the ability to develop. Again, he's only played 2 years of college ball and is already this polished. Maybe longer-ish term, he would wind up playing an outfield or, corner outfield, first base type position. But, there's a universal DH in baseball now, as much as I hate it.
Yes.
If that's what it takes, Kevin Parada is built to be a professional hitter. Not saying anything good or bad about his defense. At the very least, he's a bat that can slot into just about any lineup in Major League Baseball and immediately, well, not immediately contribute, but you know what I mean? Like, he's a bat you can build around.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the big picture thing, let's talk about what happens next, what happens after the ACC after the end of the ACC regular season. Tech has 2 series left. That's one versus Clemson and the other one versus Pitt. Both of those are away. They are right now 4th in the Coastal. They would be the 8th seed in the tournament if I counted my teams off correctly. They would face they would be in Pool A versus the 1 seed, which I had misprinted here. The 1 seed would be Louisville. No, it would be Miami again. And the 12, which would be, I think, Pitt or North Carolina or Duke. So one of them. They are also 11th. Before today's game, they were 11th in D1 Baseball's RPI. Again, this goes back to what we were saying about we don't really know how this it's a very weird boom or bust team. I think some of these projections show it. We talked earlier about how D1 Baseball has them right on the cusp of hosting a regional, right in that top 16, top 18 team range. Baseball America had Tech as the 2 seed in the Hattiesburg regional. That's with top seed Southern Miss. And then D1 Baseball had Tech and Auburn switching places, and Auburn hosting that regional, Auburn being the 13th national seed, I believe. So weird future ahead, or murky future ahead in terms of where they place nationally. What do you think they got to do to be a firm regional host?
Yeah. I mean, in order to be a firm regional host, it would have been nice to win today, but I think Tech really, what they need to do is take care of business the rest of the schedule. I don't think you can pass up a team that, is a conference winner, perhaps runner up if they're lucky in the conference tournament. But I think that there's just too many questions about this team that we've seen over the season for me to say, oh, they need to do XYZ thing. They need to take care of business, and they need some wins in the conference tournament against some quality competition. You can't go 1-1, beat Wake Forest, lose to VT or whatever that pool winds up being, and say, oh, why didn't we get a regional? You didn't get a regional because you didn't win when it really needed to happen,
Yeah. And just to look forward, like I said, they'll play Clemson. Clemson is 6-13 in the conference. Pitt is 10-10 right now. I think those both are pending some results. Pitt is right under Tech in the standings currently, so that probably decides 4th in the Coastal and some seeding there. But there are no easy outs, right? I mean, Clemson is still 28-16. Pitt is 24-17. They're not easy outs. They're not, easy teams to beat, especially in 3-game sets when you're playing them away. So, yeah, I think I'm with you. It's hard to project what this is going to look like. And I think making it to the knockout stages and winning at least one knockout game probably seals the deal for them, in terms of probably hosting, if not just locks up a very solid 2 seed in one of those lower in one of those lower regionals, I think.
If I was a host team and I saw Tech slotted into my region, pitching troubles be damned. Like I'd be pretty scared. Between Parada, Simpson, Jenkins, Gonzalez, they're Compton, Reed. Literally everyone on the lineup, up and down the lineup, is dangerous. Anyone you can slot in from the bench, pretty darn effective too. So I don't think being a 2 seed. Obviously, we want to go see some playoff baseball. But I don't think being a 2 seed somewhere else is going to be, the end all, be all, make or break kind of thing. So,
yeah, I think the difference between this team and last year's team is that the bats last year were a lot more hit or miss, whereas this year they've been pretty consistently hit, for lack of a better term, and also pun not intended. They are pretty consistent. They have put together double-digit games repeatedly over the course of the season. So I think if you're heading into a regional and you know that the way to win playoff series is pitching, but you can absolutely mash the hell out of the ball, I think you're doing okay. I think you're set. I think you're set versus any sort of pitching matchup that you're facing.
Yeah, I agree. And again, at the end of the day, a regional is a coin flip. Feels like we've come up on the losing end of the coin flip a lot. And, that's an okay way to feel sometimes, because it can be true. What was I going to say? Shoot. I mean, we saw it in Bandy last year, right? Like in it till the end of the game, deep into extra innings before, those.
Tech came a one other serviceable reliever away from winning a regional final versus Vanderbilt, who made the College World Series and was the runner-up.
Yep.
So I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Let's move on then. Let's go to the golf course. Tech is still, I think they're still ranked 11th. After their ACC tournament final versus Wake on Monday. This is older news. A lot has transpired this week. This is from last Monday. This has got to be the most dramatic golf thing I've ever watched, I think.
Yeah, I think they've definitely given people their value, because it's not often that golf gets on TV. And they were like, you know what? We're going to make Benjamin Ritter play a 5-hour-long match in the Panama City Beach heat, humidity.
Noted Dutchman, Benjamin Ritter.
Yeah, like that's tough. It's tough. They went through it. For those of you that didn't catch it, Tech, like we've alluded to, was runner-up to Wake. That's tough. Don't want to let Wake get past us in the old rankings,
ACC title rankings, but
title table, if you will.
But what's something to note here is that's Wake's first title since '89. All right, yeah. So it puts it into context. Like, and you said it last week. Like, Wake was really, really good before Tech joined the conference and before the ACC expanded to add all these really good golf teams, like Florida State and so on. So you have just this dominant period of Wake Forest that just ends in '89. And this is the first time they've been able to climb back to the precipice, but they went the distance in this one. This one was tied 2-2 after Christo Lamprecht. I think Bartley Forrester wrapped their matches up for Tech. And then Wake took 2 back So it's down to Benjamin Reuter in that last game that tips off, or the last match that tips off. And they were, I think Reuter was one down heading into the final hole. He ties it up on 18, and then we head to 3 extra holes. Reuter missed championship putts, I think he definitely missed one on the first one, and was unable to get his opponent to concede on the second one, but then had a really bad drive on the third hole and just couldn't recover. I think that kind of doomed him there.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good way to put it. You were actually watching this. I was just scoreboard refreshing because, work and stuff. But
so you got to have 2 monitors, bro.
Yeah, but I also like work in an office where people are walking by and stuff. I don't know, just not my speed, I guess. What can I say? What was I gonna say? Shoot.
Well, one thing that I'll vamp while you pick together your thoughts, but one thing that you'd mentioned in the aftermath is that Reuter fell to the number 6 amateur player in the nation, or number 6 collegiate player in the nation, right? So it's no slouch. His opponent was no slouch. It's not like, it's a fluke. It's a fluke that they went this far. Reuter put up a really good fight for the entire afternoon. I mean, he was down big at one point. I think it was 2 or 3 down, and he battled back to bring it within 1 late, tied up on 18, and then take it to extras and keep fighting the entire way. So it's a credit to him. It's a credit to Tech's coaching staff that they were able to put him in a position to succeed there. It's just, golf in many ways, unlike more than other sports, is a literal game of inches and game of angles, right? So just unfortunate that he couldn't pull it off late.
Slopes, angles, how wet the turf is, that's how long the grass is, all that good stuff. But yeah, no, it was a probably a building block moment. And again, this team's still relatively young too. So I don't know. It's tough because that was probably Tech's, I realize baseball still has a lot of baseball to play. Softball still has a tournament to go, but let's be real. That was Tech's shot to win an ACC title this year. And it's tough not to do it, but
it's tough to also go the distance and not do it. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
But they still have an NCAA tournament left, and they've routinely put together very good finishes at the NCAA tournament. And we'll just see how far they go this year. I mean, they made it to match play last year. They'll be in the mix, right? They'll be in the mix until the very end, as referenced by this Monday. So we're just gonna have to see how the cards lie on that one.
Yep, I agree.
Let's move on to the track, Mr. Grant. This was a split squad weekend for Georgia Tech track on the final weekend of the regular season. They were at Penn Relays up in Pennsylvania, obviously, and then the Torrin Lawrence Invite. Do you want to go through the results for me, please?
I can run through real quick. Penn Relays, about how they sound, they are relays. They happen in Pennsylvania. It is one of the, if not the most historic events in track and field. Very prestigious, a lot of different age groups, big time in Franklin Field. Definitely highlighted by the women's 4x8 team of Riley Perlikowski, Haley Eubank, Allie Walker, and Kayla Rose. They came in at an 8:54.80. I would think for the vast majority of runners there, they are there because, or they're getting their success based on the fact that they actually got to go because that's a big important race. So places be darned. That's got to be an amazing experience to run in a pretty cool venue and pretty historic place like that. In terms of the Torrin Lawrence, Olivia Moore, she was the only one to compete the final 2 marks, only one of 2 pole vaulters to attempt, ended her day with the 4 1/4 meter. The 4x100 relay, Shalea Harris, Taylor Grims, Anna Witherspoon, and Chloe Davis finished in second. In the 100-meter hurdles, Grimes placed third. Davis, meanwhile, followed everything up with the 100-meter with an 11:74. So pretty solid for that set of athletes. And then in the distance events, Abby Kettle, Mary Brady, those are names we don't hear as much. So good to see them in the mix, along with Jack Voss, Nick Nyman, Charlie Smith, and Chris Cherno being standout finishes on the men's side of the 1500 meter. Do you want to take us home with the long jump?
Men's long jump, John Watkins, third place in the collegiate ranks, 14.81 meters. Very nice job. We will next see the track and field team at ACCs. That's coming up, I think, in 2 weeks. You have one last word on track before we move on.
Yeah. So over the years that we've been doing this podcast, we've slowly become more and more schooled on a variety of different sports, right? Obviously, I came into this with a strong swimming softball background. Akshay came into this with the soccer background that is so useful at Georgia Tech because we have so many of those teams. And over the years, we've really tried to go into learning more about the tennis, the golf, just rounding out the portfolio, getting into volleyball, things like that. And I think I would argue probably pretty accurately that track and field is our last frontier. So, definitely interesting to see, it's a sport where they're competing against professionals and unattached athletes, and all that good stuff, Olympic hopeful. Big thing about Penn relays, from what I've read is, a lot of Olympic type caliber athletes are up there, but also, prestigious, younger kids too. So definitely our final frontier. Again, reach out to us if you want to school us on track sometimes, but at the very least, I think that's at the top of my summer project list is just learning up, other than, speedy runner go zoom and, runner jump high. I obviously extreme oversimplification. Now I sound like an idiot, but that's pretty par for the course, eh?
Oh, it's absolutely par for the course, let me tell you. But that's also how you imbibe F1. So I don't think anything is particularly different there.
Yeah. Point is, if it ever seems like we're a little bit short on track, it's because we don't want to sound like we don't know what we're talking about. And our mission, now that I would likely say we've found out about the other ones, is to, come up to speed on track. Obviously, if you are track adjacent, or if you are really passionate about a sport club or something that we should be talking about more, let us know. We have a couple of interesting podcast topics in the pipeline for the summer. Obviously, the summer is #construction talk season. So for those of you who have missed out on us talking about buildings and bricks and stuff like that, just get hyped, because the summer's coming fast.
Oh, we're going to do another Jake walks around town and decides to record episode, and it's going to be great.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
This is me at the Campanile construction site. Let's see what's going on.
It might be done by that point.
That's
Who
true.
knows?
Is it supposed to be done like soon?
Depends which Campanile. The Georgia Tech Campanile is the one you mean. Yeah. Should be. I don't know.
If I could figure out what was going on at the John Dewberry Campanile, Urbanize Atlanta would be backing up the Briggs truck, Wow. That is an urbanist blog about development that goes on around Atlanta.
This is a niche.
They've been trying to figure it out for a while. There, I've brought our listeners up to speed.
Niche podcasting reference. Anything else to niche podcast reference before we have to walk out today?
Yeah, keep an eye on the tennis scene for one, maybe two team draws, and then as well as the singles and doubles draws, because it will be interesting to see how the single and double entries fare, especially on the men's side, who really had a couple of extremely elite talents in Anders Martin and Marcus McDaniel. So should be interesting to see how that shakes out. If anyone has any feedback or comments or questions or suggestions, or I don't know, advertisements for Cyprus, I don't know, drop us a line at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com, at FTRS blog on Twitter, in the comments for from the Rumble Seat articles. You can also DM me at Jake Grant 98 on Twitter. With that, that's all I got.
That's all I got too. We will see you all next week.